Hi, this is Gary with MacMost.com. Let me show you what you can do if your Mac is running slow. MacMost is brought to you thanks to a great group of more than 1,000 supporters. Go to MacMost.com/Patreon. There you could read more about the Patreon campaign, join us, and get exclusive content and course discounts. So if you think your Mac is running slower than it should be, there are several things that you can do to figure out what the problem is and fix it. One of the main things that will cause your Mac to run slow is if you're running out of storage space. Now, storage space and memory are two different things. Memory is what apps use to run, and storage is your hard drive or SSD that is used to store all of your files. But computers actually use storage as additional memory. That allows you to run more apps and do more things than you normally would with the memory that you have. But if your Mac is running low on storage, it won't be able to do this as well, and you'll find that things run much slower. In macOS Ventura and later, go to the Apple menu and then System Settings. Then go to General and Storage. If you're using macOS Monterey or earlier, you would go to the Apple menu and About This Mac and then click on Storage at the top. Now check to see how much space it shows is available. If this is just a very small amount, particularly if it's less than 20 or 30 gigs, then that's probably your issue. What you would need to do then is follow some of the recommendations here or use some of the other options here to reduce the amount of storage you're using. This may involve removing some apps you're not using, deleting files you no longer need, maybe taking some of those files and archiving them to an external drive. Do what you need to do to clear up much more space so you have plenty available. Now if you have one or more apps that are using too much memory, that could cause those apps or maybe all of your apps to run slow. To check for this, launch Activity Monitor. I'm going to use Launchpad and search for it and then run it. Now I want you to go to Memory here at the top. And then you should go to View and switch to All Processes. And then make sure you sort by memory with the largest at the top. Now don't worry too much if it looks like apps are using more memory than you actually have. Because remember, storage is being used as extra memory as well. So it's perfectly normal for these to add up to more than the memory you know you have on your Mac. The thing you really need to check is down here at the bottom where it says memory pressure. If memory pressure is all green down here, then you're not having memory issues. Even if you see apps that are using lots of memory. If memory pressure is green, there's no problem. Even if it's yellow, it doesn't necessarily mean that memory is an issue. Only if you see this graph here showing red should you worry about memory. And even then, if it's just a temporary spike into red, that's fine as well, as long as it's green right now. But if you are worried about an app using way too much memory here, like it shows a ridiculous amount of memory, then you could always quit that app and try relaunching it or restarting your Mac. It's possible that third-party apps have bugs in them that make them request a lot more memory than they actually need. If you see that as a persistent problem, some third-party app using 20, 30, 40 gigs of RAM, then you may want to contact the developer, go to their site, and see if there's an explanation for it or if you can get support from them. And also, in addition to checking memory, you can check CPU use as well. So you see all the different processes here and the percent of CPU being used. We can sort that. So the top task is here. Usually you'll find things like Windows Server, kernel task, system processes that are near the top. And remember, percentage is percent of a single CPU. So for instance, if you have an M1 MacBook Air that has 8 CPUs on it, then the total would be 800, not 100 here. So don't be alarmed if you see something using more than 100%. Also note you shouldn't worry about memory used very much. Mac OS and modern operating systems are going to use as much memory as possible to make things faster. They're not just going to leave memory unused, as that doesn't do you any good at all to have memory sitting there doing nothing. So even if you're not doing much on your Mac right now, seeing memory maxed out is perfectly normal. Now I have to mention maintenance apps early on here. A lot of people have installed cleaner apps, antivirus, anti-malware, some sort of maintenance app from some third party, and those things may even promise to make your Mac faster. But in reality, they can really slow down your Mac. So many times when I hear about somebody with a slow Mac and I ask them if they've got one of these maintenance or cleaning apps, they do, and when they uninstall it, everything's fine. You don't need anti-malware software on your Mac. You already have that built into Mac OS. And cleaning software is just going to perform some of the same maintenance tasks that your Mac already does, or it's going to perform unnecessary tasks, taking up more processing power, more memory, and all of that. If your Mac is running slow and you've got some third-party cleaner or antivirus app installed, definitely try uninstalling that completely. Follow the app maker's instructions for uninstalling, get it completely off your Mac, and see if things improve. This also goes for Safari extensions. So in Safari, if you go to Settings or Preferences and then you go to Extensions, you'll see a list of extensions. You may see some things here that you didn't even know you had because they came along with an app. So look through what you have here, and if you're not using an extension, switch it off. And if your Mac is running slow and you don't know why, you may try switching all of these off and see if that improves things. Now, often I hear from people saying their Mac is running slow and they just upgraded to a new version of Mac OS. This is typical because as soon as you upgrade, there's a lot of system maintenance that needs to be done. For instance, Spotlight may need to re-index everything. You may have a particularly large backup going on right now, and there may be other system maintenance as well. As a matter of fact, Apple even gives you a warning after you do a major update that tells you that things may be slow for a little while. A lot of people ignore this or dismiss it so fast they don't even remember seeing it. But it's always there when you do a major update. And one thing that could be adding to that is if you're not letting your Mac sleep, if you're shutting it down. This is one of the most common mistakes that Mac users make. They think at the end of the day when they're finished working they need to shut down their Mac and then start it up again before they start work again in the morning. But in fact, you should just let your Mac sleep. When your Mac sleeps, it actually performs maintenance tasks in the background. And it will do these while you're not using your Mac. It'll even hold off on these maintenance tasks while you're using your Mac so as not to slow you down and save them for doing later on while it's asleep. But if you shut down every night and start it up again just when you're going to use it, well, number one, it's going to get behind on these maintenance tasks. Number two, it's going to try to do them while you're working. Just let your Mac sleep so it can perform these maintenance tasks. There's really no reason to shut down your Mac unless it's a desktop Mac like an iMac and you need to move it somewhere else, or if you're going to go a really long period of time, more than just a few days, without using your Mac at all. Now, if your Mac is being slow when accessing the internet, but not in general, then the problem may not be your Mac at all, but maybe your internet connection. You most likely have a Wi-Fi router or some sort of modem connecting you to your telephone or cable service. When was the last time you logged into that to see if there was an update that needed to be performed, or what was the last time you restarted it? Simply restarting your internet equipment, if you haven't done so in a long time, could fix internet problems. And you should also probably every once in a while go to a site like speedtest.net and run a speed test to see if you're getting the speeds that your provider has promised you. And of course, if you're having trouble with your internet connection, you should contact your provider for assistance. Now, while your Mac does do a great job of managing memory and using storage as additional memory, there's still limits. Having 5 or 6 or 7 apps running at the same time should be fine on any Mac, but having 30 or 40 apps running may be a problem for some Macs. And the same thing for browser windows and tabs. Having just a few tabs running shouldn't be a problem for anybody. But if you've got 40, 50, or 100 tabs open, that could be an issue. Every tab is showing a web page. Every web page is like a little app, and not all websites are well programmed. Some could be using a lot of memory and processing power even if you're not using them. You could actually see how much memory each one of these is using by returning to Activity Monitor. When you're looking at the memory section, you should see each web page shown here as kind of its own app. Nothing here is particularly misbehaving, but if you see something at the top that's using many gigabytes of memory and you're not even looking at that tab, then you may want to close it. You also see web pages show up here in CPU. As a matter of fact, you can use search and just search for HTTP and it will just show you the web pages. In general though, try to keep your tabs under control. Don't be afraid to close a tab. Closing a tab won't make the website go away forever. The site's still there. You can go back to it. If it's something you go to often, add it as a bookmark. Even put it here in your favorites bar if you like for quick access. You may like having tons and tons of tabs open and be able to jump to any one that you want at any time. But if your Mac is running slow, you've got to at least check to see whether or not that's what's causing it. Now, another problem you could be having is apps that are running in the background and you don't even know it. In macOS Ventura, you can go to System Settings and then General and then Login Items. Before Ventura, you would have to go to Users and Groups and then look at Login Items there. Here you'll see two lists that show apps that will launch automatically. See a list here at the top and you'll see a list here of other apps and switches next to them. Don't be afraid if you don't recognize an app here. It may simply be showing the developer's name rather than the app name. A quick Google search will usually tell you which app that is. And the idea here is to remove anything that you don't think you need. Perhaps not just select it here and use the minus button, but uninstall that app completely using the developer's instructions for uninstalling. Now another thing you should try is restarting your Mac in safe mode. How you do that depends on which Mac you have and which version of macOS. So go to this page at Apple's site, identify the version of macOS that you're running, and also follow the instructions based on whether you're using Apple Silicon or an Intel based Mac. Restart in safe mode. The first thing that'll do is when you're in safe mode, no background apps will launch when you start. So you'll be running completely without those. So try some things. Don't do any actual work, but just try using various apps and see if your Mac is still slow. If it's not, this really points to the fact that one of these apps that's launching by itself is what's slowing down your Mac. The other thing that safe mode does is it actually runs system diagnostics and tests when you do it. So just by restarting in safe mode and then restarting again in normal mode may fix some issues. Another thing you could do during a reboot is to reset the NVRAM on your Mac. This is a small amount of special memory on your Mac that has some settings in it. Now if you have a Mac with Apple Silicon, an M1 or M2 Mac, then this doesn't apply. So this is only for older Intel Macs. And this page here will tell you how to reset your NVRAM on those older Macs. Another thing you could try resetting is the System Management Controller or SMC. And this controls various things on your Mac. Resetting it can sometimes fix problems. Now doing this on an Apple Silicon Mac with an M1 or M2 and so on, it will just do it automatically whenever you restart your Mac. But if you have an older Mac, then you've got to follow the instructions further down on this page depending upon which Mac that you have. Now another issue with your Mac could be heat. If your Mac is running too hot, it will slow itself down so that it doesn't overheat. Now this is much more of a problem for older Intel Macs than it is for new Apple Silicon Macs. But it's possible on any computer really that it could overheat and then slow itself down to save itself. The cause for this could be something as simple as a case that you have on your MacBook that's not letting the heat escape, or maybe the position of your Mac on your desk. Like if you have a Mac Mini and it's covered with stuff so it can't actually vent the heat. So you want to make sure your Mac isn't getting too hot. Now you can actually go into Activity Monitor, and while there's no mention of heat here, if you go to Energy, energy really equals heat when it comes to processing, and you can sort here and see which apps are using the most energy. Now this doesn't mean anything if your Mac isn't hot. And if your Mac is running hot, maybe you can just quit that app to improve things. Now another thing to consider with your Mac is that it could be that your hard drive is having issues. To test this, you can run Disk Utility. Now what you're going to want to do is make sure you have View, Show All Devices, and then be able to select the top level of the device, the actual drive itself. And then you can run First Aid on it. Now on newer Macs it's that simple, but on older Macs you're going to have to restart your Mac into a special recovery mode in order to use Disk Utility to check your Mac's internal drive. You can go to this page here to see the startup combinations depending upon whether you're using Apple Silicon or an Intel based Mac. Now going back to the browser, if you find your Mac's only slow when using your browser or maybe even just using one website on the browser, it could be that the cookies stored by one or more sites are causing this. Again, every website is like its own individual app and it's graded by a group of programmers, and websites vary greatly in quality. So if a website is misbehaving, one of the ways you can fix that is in Safari, go to Settings and then go to Privacy and then Manage Website Data and then search for that site. After doing the search, you should see that site here listed. You can select it and remove, and that will clear out the cache, cookies, and other data stored by that site. That would log you out of the site if you're logged into it. This is kind of like restarting the website for you. It'll fix some problems some of the time. And if you're finding you're having lots of problems on lots of websites, instead of searching you may just want to remove all. And that will log you out of all the different websites that you're in right now, so it's kind of inconvenient. But if you're having issues, it may be worth trying. Here are a couple of things that shouldn't affect newer Macs. But if you have a much older Mac and you find it running slow, they may be worth trying. One is if you go to Notification Center here on the right and you've got tons of these widgets. If that's the case, edit widgets and then go and remove some of these. Like for instance, I'll remove this one here and this one here. Remove anything you're not really using. Another thing that may be an issue with older Macs, but not really with newer ones, is if you have a lot of things on your desktop. On those older Macs, all of the icons here that need to be generated as previews, like for these numbers documents here, for these images, for these videos, they all take a little bit of time and a little bit of memory to create the icons. So having a lot of things on your desktop could be an issue. I'm not talking about having 10 or 20 things. I'm talking about having 50 or 100 things on your desktop. If that's the case, you can quickly clean up your desktop by going to your Documents folder. Maybe creating a new folder there called Desktop Stuff. Grab everything on your desktop and drag it into it. And that cleans off your desktop instantly while keeping all of those things. And then when you have time, go through your desktop stuff and file and organize things properly in your Documents folder. Now another issue may happen to some of us who are using an external drive for storing files. So an internal drive on a Mac, especially a newer Mac, is super fast. Even much faster than similar looking drives you can get externally. Apple's SSDs are top speed. So if you have an external drive that is a hard drive or even an SSD, it's not going to be as fast and it's also going to be hampered by the speed of the connection, usually USB, that you have going into your Mac. So using a file on your internal drive, say if you're editing a video or a large spreadsheet or something, that's going to be much faster than if you're using an external drive and actually editing the file directly from there. It's not going to make too much of a difference for small files, text files, things like that. But for big video projects, lots of images, large keynote presentations, that kind of thing, definitely try to have files on your internal drive when you're actually using them on your Mac. A common thing that might be slow on your Mac is Spotlight. When you do Spotlight searches, like searching for a file, you may not get results really quickly. A way to fix that is to rebuild the Spotlight index, which you think would be a button or something, but it's actually this little process you have to go through. In macOS Ventura you go to System Settings and then you go to Siri and Spotlight. In Monterey and earlier you would go to System Preferences and Spotlight. In both you're going to see a list of privacy options here. And the idea is to add the entire drive to this. So go up to the top level here, add your drive, and then it's now not going to be indexed anymore and that index will be erased. Then simply remove that drive and now it's going to begin the process of re-indexing everything. Now when a Mac is running slow, a lot of people jump to the conclusion that something's wrong with their Mac's hardware. And I've already talked about how that's actually pretty reasonable when it comes to the drive itself. But for the rest of your hardware, it's unlikely that a hardware issue is going to make your Mac slow. Most likely a hardware issue is going to make your Mac not turn on at all. But there are issues that could come up, like memory issues and such. If you want to check your Mac's hardware, you can run a diagnostic test. Apple has this page here which takes you through the steps, depending on which Mac you have, of running the system diagnostics. Now if you've tried all or at least some of these things and you still can't figure out why your Mac is slow, you shouldn't just put up with it. You should use Apple support to try to get to the bottom of the problem. Your best bet is to take your Mac into an Apple store. Every store is a Genius Bar where Apple Tech Support can take a first-hand look at your Mac, run some tests, see what's actually going on. Usually though the first step is to contact Apple support either with online chat or on the phone. If you go to this web page, you'll see these options down here. And it's best to go through these steps to see if there's something that can be done for you without having to take your Mac into the store. But if they can't figure out remotely, then you should make an appointment at the Genius Bar to get help. A consultation at the Genius Bar is free. If something's wrong with your Mac, if it needs some sort of repair, then they'll quote you a price. I'm still surprised at the number of people that report that their Mac has been slow for a while and they haven't tried to contact Apple support to get help. You paid a lot for your Mac and you shouldn't have to put up with a slow Mac without at least finding out what the issue is and what it's going to take to fix it. So there's a look at a lot of different things that you can do to fix a slow Mac. I hope you found one or more of them useful. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, click the thumbs up button below to let me know. I publish new tutorials each weekday. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out.